Hi, I'm Elizabeth Stumbo with American Patchwork and Quilting, and today's video is brought to you by Baby Lock. Are you ever stuck in a straight stitch rut, or are you curious about some of the many options of stitches available on your machine? Well, today I want to share with you 5 useful stitches for quilters and sewers. Our first stitch is a reinforcement stitch or a stay stitch. It's this little open circle button on the crescendo. This stitch will sew 3 stitches in the same spot to lock your seam, as opposed to a back stitch, which adds an additional line of thread. For character or decorative stitches, when you press this button, the design will end with a full stitch instead of in the middle of your design. The next helpful stitch is a basting stitch. It's automatically set up for an extra long stitch, which is meant to hold pieces in place before sewing them together. They're easy to rip out if they end up showing in your finished piece. This stitch is also great for creating ruffles because the long stitches are easy to pull to create the gather. A basting stitch is also the perfect way to secure the edge of an unfinished quilt top. This is especially useful if your top will sit unfinished for a while. And once you're ready to quilt, the basting stitch will ensure those seams close to the edges won't come apart. Another workhorse stitch is the Zigzag Stitch. This is a versatile stitch that is great for applique, but also helps keep raw edges from fraying if you don't have a serger. On some home decor projects especially, we recommend stitching a zigzag stitch between the raw edges and your seam to give your project an extra layer of security. And don't forget about the 3-step zigzag stitch or the elastic stitch. This zigzag takes extra stitches to create a zigzag stitch that will still stretch with the fabric and prevents tunneling. This is perfect for sewing with knits and other stretchy fabrics. We also like to use it to join batting pieces. If you enjoy quilting your own projects, consider using the Serpentine Stitch. This is one of my favorites because it's just as easy as straight stitching, but gives a little more movement and texture to your finished quilt. Try shortening or lengthening the stitch to create different looks. I especially love to use this when I am quilting small projects. The final stitch I want to share with you gives the appearance of hand stitching, but without all the work. This is basically a running stitch, however the difference is that it goes back over every other stitch. This creates the look of hand stitching. The trick is to use a clear or monofilament thread on top and a regular thread in your desired color in the bobbin. So those were some of my most used stitches, but there are so many more great stitches to play around with on the Baby Lock crescendo. So I encourage you to explore those stitches and get out of your straight stitching rut.